Broncos country, welcome back, and in today's video, we're going over my final 2026 NFL mock draft, or I should say mock drafts, because there will be multiple mock drafts in this video. Now, the three mock drafts I will be doing is the first one is going to be my dream scenario for the Broncos. The second one is going to be a realistic mock draft that I think could happen, and one that I'm kind of guessing on, but I mean, I feel like that's every mock draft, but there's those two, and then we'll do my full first round 32 team mock draft. Now, some info about those three mock drafts. The first one, my dream scenario, I'm going to try and keep it fairly realistic, but that's kind of a loose term. It's not going to be anything crazy of, oh, Kenyon Sadiq's fallen to 62 for the Broncos to select. No, it's going to be more in the lines of it's going to try and be realistic, but a lot of things have to happen in order for this scenario to come true. So it's going to be very far-fetched, but semi-realistic. The second one is going to be more of a realistic mock draft of what could happen for the Broncos come draft day. And then the third one for the full 32-team first-round mock draft, going to have no trades. So a lot of people have the Cardinals trading up for Ty Simpson. There's going to be no trades in that full 32-team first-round mock draft. Now, when this video is being released, that's either going to be Wednesday night, or Thursday early morning. I will be doing my traditional live streams for all 3 days of the NFL draft, so they should be scheduled on the channel by the time you see this, and if they're not, they should be scheduled very, very soon because we'll be going live for all 3 days. At least that is the plan. Now, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below, as the support is greatly appreciated. And let's go ahead and let's jump straight in to my dream scenario mock draft. All right, let's jump into my dream scenario mock draft. And just a reminder, this is going to be semi-realistic, but it's probably not going to happen because it's super far-fetched, super out there. A lot of things are going to happen in order for this scenario to come true, but it's my dream scenario in terms of what I want the Broncos to do in terms of trades, what players I want the Broncos to select. This is my personal dream scenario. So just keep that in mind. This isn't my official prediction for the Broncos. This is just my dream scenario. So starting off, I have us trading up with the Atlanta Falcons, and I did a trade value chart, so this is kind of along the lines of what you should give up in terms of the trade being equal on both sides. Of course, there can be taxes in terms of having to pay up more to trade up. But this was a fair trade that I found with that value chart. So we received the 48th overall pick from the Atlanta Falcons. In exchange, we give up the 62nd overall pick, the 111th overall pick, and a fourth rounder in 2027. And I hate giving up 2027 picks just because that draft is looking really, really nice next year. But in order to move up, we're getting one of my favorite players in this entire draft, and that's linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. Now, I know he probably isn't going to fall this far. I think the latest I've seen him fall was 48. Earliest I've seen him go is late first round, early second round, around that area. I personally have him as a first-round talent, and so I think he should go in the first round. But if he does slip into the second, and he does start to slip because linebackers are one of those positions where they're not valued as high, so they could slide down a little bit, I would be all in favor of trading up for Jacob Rodriguez, a linebacker out of Texas Tech. I stopped talking about him after we traded away the 30th overall pick because realistically there wasn't going to be a chance for us to draft him. But now, and I still think that's kind of far-fetched, far out there, but in my dream scenario, if Jacob Rodriguez does slip, I would trade up and go get him. You can see in his 4 seasons as a linebacker, because his first year at Virginia, he was a quarterback, but he was fantastic on the defensive side of the football, having the ability to drop back and play in coverage, as well as being a very solid run stuffer. You don't have to pass rush him. You can pass rush other linebackers. I really like what Jacob Rodriguez brings to the table in terms of helping stop the run and also being a guy who you can rely on dropping back and playing in coverage. Jacob Rodriguez is probably my favorite player in this draft. I say that there's other guys I like higher. I think Caleb Downs would argue, or would be the other guy who would be my favorite player in the draft. Not saying that he should be like a top 5 pick or anything, but Jacob Rodriguez is one of my favorite players in this entire draft. Got Heisman votes for a reason. He is a fantastic, fantastic player. And if the Broncos were able to snag him at 51, I think this would be a fantastic trade up for a fantastic player. Now, at 108, I have us selecting Oscar Delp, tight end out of Georgia. Delp is one of my personal favorite players in this draft as well, hence why it's my dream scenario mock draft. And if he was the pick, if Oscar Delp was the pick at 62, you would hear no complaints from me. I'm that high on Oscar Delp. But if you were able to get him in the 4th round, that's even better value for me. And again, he's one of my favorite players in this draft. He's a fantastic, fantastic blocker. And then you see the athleticism that he poses with his long speed, just his ability to get open and be that receiver as well, or at least the athleticism to be that receiver as well. I love Oscar Delp. Now, the big problem with Oscar Delp is the lack of production. So that is a big concern for some people, and I've seen that concern thrown out. But I personally don't have that concern. I think that Oscar Delp, he doesn't have to necessarily start right away. You have Evan Ingram. He's going to be the primary receiving target. And then you obviously sign Adam Troutman to an extension. I'm feeling like he's going to get a lot of snaps in this offense. Oscar Delp can take his first season, at least the first half of the season, develop. And then if you want to throw him in at the back half of the season, you can as well. I'm super high on Oscar Delp, and I would love to grab him at any point in this draft. Again, if he was to pick at pick 62, I would personally not be upset. But if we were able to grab him at 108, then that's even better value for the Broncos. Then at pick 170, I have us selecting Kalen Black, running back out of Indiana. We missed out on some of the top guys. Jadarian Price I like, Jonah Coleman I like, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. They were all gone. But here in the 5th round, we get another favorite running back of mine, or I should say a favorite late round running back of mine, Kalen Black out of Indiana. Him and Roman Hemby I think would both be fantastic selections. And Kalen Black from the national champion Indiana Hoosiers, I would just love this pick for the Broncos. You would have R.J. Harvey, Kalen Black, J.K. Dobbins, obviously those 3 as the primary running backs, and you could figure out the rest of the room with Jaleel McLaughlin, with Tyler Bidet. There's other guys there, but I really like the addition of Kalen Black, and you would honestly have a running back by committee. J.K. Dobbins would be the guy who you give a majority of the carries to. R.J. Harvey, you're hoping who can still develop into something nice in terms of a runner, because he's a very nice receiving back. And then Kalen Black, you can have sitting back there developing for whenever J.K. Dobbins' contract is out. If you don't re-sign him after the 2-year contract, you have a nice guy in Kalen Black back there to be a solid running back for you. Then in the 7th round at 246, I was selecting Taylon Green, quarterback out of Arkansas. Was one of my favorite players when I mocked him a couple mock drafts ago. And then after watching, I don't know how many of you are watching that Gruden's QB camp, Taylon Green, just everything that he was able to put on that video in terms of his intelligence and him wanting to be a quarterback and wanting to get better and just being this high athleticism quarterback who, if you pick him in the 7th round, will be on a very cheap contract. You're able to take the cap space that you're paying to Jarrett Stidham and Sam Ehlinger and allocate that to other parts of the roster if you're able to get your backup quarterback on a rookie deal and you feel confident that he can come in and he can be a competent backup. And I really like what Taylon Green brings to the table. Spent obviously 2 years as a starter at Boise State and then the past 2 seasons as the starter at Arkansas. Then at pick 256, I was selecting Lewis Moore, safety out of Indiana, just another depth guy. When you look at that safety room, Brandon Jones is in a contract year. I'm hoping we can re-sign him, but if you don't, you're going to have Talanoa Hufanga, PJ Locke left in free agency. You got J.L. Skinner, who I like as a special teams guy, but his contract's up after this season. I like Devin Key. He's starting to feel like that third safety this year, how PJ Locke was last season. You got some guys, but a lot of them are entering contract years, so I would highly expect the Broncos to select a safety at some point in the draft, and I really like the value of Lewis Moore here in the 7th round. Then at pick 257, Michael Heldman is going to be Mr. Irrelevant, edge out of Central Michigan. Didn't really know who this was before making this mock draft, but he had a lot of production as an edge rusher with the Chippewas at Central Michigan. And I like the upside that he brings to the table, especially when you're looking at that edge room. You obviously got Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper as your first two starters. I like Jonah Ellis. I'm hoping he can stay as that edge 3, but we'll see what happens with him potentially switching to off-ball inside linebacker. You also have Drew Sanders moving back to the edge. You have Q Robinson. I like what you can bring in with Michael Heldman and potentially develop him with, or what you can potentially do to develop him. You obviously got Dondre Tillman in that room as well, so it would be a very crowded room, but I was just looking for any defensive lineman here in the 7th round, and honestly, best player available as well. And that's what you should be looking for, is best player available in the 7th round. But really like Michael Heldman out of Central Michigan. Would not be shocked if he was actually picked way higher than the 7th round, just based on what I saw. But yeah, Michael Heldman is Mr. Irrelevant in this mock draft. So with the next mock draft, that's going to be my predictive mock draft of what I think the Broncos might do come draft day. Now, we're going to take a cut right here, but it's going to be instantaneous for you. So yeah, let's get right into this predictive mock draft. All right, Broncos country, so this part of the video is being filmed one day later on the eve of the draft. I filmed the first section on Tuesday, but now this mock draft and the next one are both being filmed on Wednesday, so yeah. But this one is going to be a realistic mock draft. Initially, I was doing a predictive mock draft for this one, but I figured I have no idea what Peyton and Co are doing, so yeah, this is going to be a realistic mock draft of what I think could happen. It's not going to really be predictive. I mean, I guess you could say it's my official prediction for what I think the Broncos are going to do, but I feel like myself and most people have no clue what the Broncos are going to do here. So this is going to be a realistic option of what could potentially happen for the Denver Broncos. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get into this section of the mock draft. We also are going to have a trade. We're trading up to 51 with Carolina in exchange. Carolina gets 62, 111, and a 5th in 2027. And as I mentioned in the previous section, I hate giving up 2027 draft capital because I really like how that draft class is shaping out currently. But this is currently the trade for the Broncos. And with the 51st overall pick, I have us selecting Anthony Hill, Jr., linebacker from Texas. So another linebacker who plays in the state of Texas. So that's going to be Anthony Hill, who was a 3-year starter at the University of Texas, played in 40 games, and I just love the ability that he brings to the table. Was initially projected as a first-rounder at the start of the year, has slipped down a little bit, but I still think he is a very, very talented prospect, and there's a lot of people who are mocking him to the Broncos at 62. I don't think he slides that far. Now, he could, because as I mentioned with Jacob Rodriguez, linebacker is one of those positions that typically slide in the draft. Safety and running back being some other ones, but linebackers typically fall in the draft because they're not valued as highly in terms of their positional value. So Anthony Hill could fall to 62, but I definitely think he's going to be a guy you have to trade up for a little bit in the 2nd round, but I'd be all for it with the traits that he brings to the table. I love the upside that he brings in terms of coverage. That's kind of where I'm looking at in terms of linebackers in this draft class, because we need guys who can cover. If they bring more stuff with him, excellent, but I feel like coverage is the main area of need for the Broncos, as I mentioned time and time again. You get that with Anthony Hill, at least the upside in coverage with his athleticism at the linebacker position. You'd probably obviously have Singleton to start because he's going to be wearing the green dot next season. You have Strnad, who took tremendous strides last year in terms of his coverage. And then you would have Anthony Hill as that linebacker 3 right now. You got other guys in there with Karene Reed. You got Lavelle Bailey, but definitely need to add to that position group, especially after cutting Drake Greenlaw. So would love Anthony Hill if that was the direction we were to go. Still a top 5 linebacker for me in this class, if I'm being honest. I think it's Sonny Styles 1, Jacob Rodriguez 2, CJ Allen 3, and then I think Anthony Hill 4. I don't have my rankings with me, but I think he's my 4th linebacker, if I'm remembering things correctly. Again, I'll have to check, and if you want to see my full rankings, I'll reveal that in tomorrow's live stream during draft day. We're going to go live little bit earlier than the draft, and I'll go through all of my personal rankings per position. So if you're interested in that, make sure you tune in. But yeah, Anthony Hill is still one of my top rated linebackers. Would love him if he was the pick at 51. Moving to 108, I have a selecting Eli Reardon, tight end out of Notre Dame. He just feels like one of those tight ends that Sean Payton would love. We obviously drafted Caleb Lohner last year, and you're still hoping to develop Caleb Lohner, but I think Eli Reardon, just his athleticism that he brings to the table, as well as playing football for the past 4 seasons, as opposed to Caleb Lohner playing basketball, and his blocking upside, I think Eli Reardon kind of fits that mold for a Sean Payton tight end. I don't know. I just kind of get that vibe. And while I have mentioned prior that at pick 62, that's a little rich for my blood, I would be okay with the pick, but I would think it would just be a little bit of a reach at 62. Here at pick 108, I think would be fantastic value. Brings the blocking, has the sure hands, not going to drop really anything that's thrown his way. Of course, every receiver, every tight end is going to drop a couple passes, unless you're Larry Fitzgerald. But yeah, Eli Reardon, he has sure hands. He's going to catch mostly everything that is thrown his way. So Eli Reardon, solid hand, or I say solid, but really good hands, really nice athleticism, was way more athletic than I thought, and just kind of feels like a Sean Payton tight end, if I'm being honest. Then in the 5th round at pick 170, I have a selecting Zane Durant, defensive lineman out of Penn State. One of my favorite mid-round guys if you want to address the defensive line. I think if you're going to go D-line in the 5th round, this would be my preferred option, assuming someone doesn't slide to the 5th. But Zane Durant would be very, very nice. Obviously, you're hoping to hit on Savion Jones. You got Malcolm Roach, but I feel like he's kind of the same role of a DJ Jones, where he and DJ Jones might rotate in, being those nose tackles to stuff and stop the run. And then you got Zach Allen on the other side as well. I feel like you're obviously hoping, as I mentioned, Savion Jones develops, but Zane Durant would be a nice guy to add in there for depth as well, to help rebuild that defensive line after losing John Franklin Myers, and just to keep yourself having some depth in that defensive line room. And then I accidentally just spoiled all the picks, so I apologize about that. But with our next pick, I have a selecting Lorenzo Styles, safety out of Ohio State. Has played 3 seasons as a defensive back, currently as a safety, projected as a safety. Played 2 as a wide receiver, and this is the brother of Sonny Styles, who's expected to be a top 5 pick. And I just believe that when you look at that safety room, you lost P.J. Locke, who was that 3rd safety. You're kind of replacing Devin Key with him. At least that's the rumors right now. You got J.L. Skinner, who I like, but he's in a contract year. Brandon Jones is in a contract year. So when you're looking at the safety room, definitely expect a safety to be drafted. Love the upside of Lorenzo Styles, just the pure athleticism that he brought and he displayed at the combine. Could be a nice special teamer to start off, and then you could rotate him into that safety mix a little bit later in his career. Would not mind this pick at all here in the 7th round, but because of the athleticism that he showed, he could definitely go a lot higher than the 7th round. Then we move on to pick 256, and I'm having to select Malik Benson, wide receiver out of Oregon. Played in 3 seasons, all at different schools, most recently at Oregon, prior at Alabama and Florida State, I believe. And Malik Benson, I like the upside that you can dream on and develop as a receiver, but I love his ability as a returner. He was a punt returner, and there's been rumors of Marvin Mims potentially being gone after the season, which I hope isn't true, but if he is, you definitely need to find another guy who you can put back there and be a returner, and I think Malik Benson has that capability. And we've also seen on kick returns, you have Marvin Mims back there, and then another guy like Tyler Bidet. So it'd be really nice if you're able to keep Marvin Mims and then have Mims and Malik Benson back there on kick returns. And Malik Benson, just a late round prospect that I like. I think he's being slept on just a little bit, but if he's here at 256, would be A-okay with selecting Malik Benson here. And then at pick 257, Trip Trianum, running back out of Toledo, played at Ohio State, Kentucky, and Arizona State before Toledo, and I really like him as a late-round gem. Here we have him as Mr. Irrelevant. I've seen a lot of people comment on my videos about Chip Trianum, and I'd be all for it here in the later rounds as a late-round sleeper type of guy. Average 5.3 yards per carry, and just someone who you can add to that running back room. If we don't, If we don't add to the running back room early, which obviously we didn't in this mock draft with Anthony Hill, Eli Raridon, I like Chip Trayanum. Again, I would prefer one of those guys who's a bruiser, who's going to fight for those extra yards, get those tough yards. But if we don't go running back early, Chip Trayanum would be a guy who I wouldn't mind in the 7th round. I'd be disappointed we didn't go running back earlier, but definitely one of those guys who I like here in the late rounds. But that's going to round out my, I want to say predictive, but I'm going to say realistic mock draft, because who knows what the Broncos are going to do come draft day. But yeah, that's going to be my realistic mock draft, where all these players could and probably should be available for the Broncos for the most part, obviously trading up for Anthony Hill. But that's my realistic mock draft. Let's go ahead. Let's jump straight into my full first round mock draft for day 1 of the NFL draft. All right, Broncos country, here's my first round mock draft for the entire NFL. So obviously it's going to include all first round picks 1 through 32, but there are a few things I want to mention before we get into this mock. One, there's going to be no trades in this mock draft. So a lot of people have the Cardinals trading up for Ty Simpson, which I think that's the most likely scenario, but it's not happening in this mock draft because I did no trades. The second thing I want to mention is that I am a Broncos fan, so I have an outside perspective on all of these teams. This is just from, obviously, my outside perspective of what I think each of these teams should do in the draft. And it's also a predictive a little bit. So it's predictive mixed with what I think they should do. Plus, on top of that, I'm mixing the consensus board with my personal rankings. So sometimes I'm going to go with my personal rankings. Sometimes I'll go with consensus over my personal rankings. So for example, I think Jacob Rodriguez should be a first round pick, but because of consensus has him just outside the first round as an early to mid second round pick, he's not going to be a pick here, even though I think he should be a first round pick. So that's just an example, but let's go ahead. Let's get started with this mock draft. We're going to go very, very quickly through this. We got 32 picks to talk about. So 1-1, we all know Fernando Mendoza is going to be the pick here out of Indiana to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, what I like to do is, the reason why I make one of these is I like to go through and kind of guess and predict, and as the draft goes on, I like to say, oh, yeah, this is my pick for this team right now, and I like to keep track of how many I get right and get wrong. It's just something fun I like to do. But yeah, moving on to the second pick, I have the Jets selecting Arvell Reese, edge rusher out of Ohio State. I know a lot of people think that David Bailey is going to be the pick here. I'm not as high on David Bailey as a lot of people are. I like Arvell Reese, and I know he's moving from off-ball linebacker to an edge rusher, but Arvell Reese, I really like. I think he's one of the best prospects in this draft. I would go Arvell Reese here, so that's kind of where I verge from consensus right here. At pick 3, I have the Cardinals selecting Francis Mauigoa, the offensive tackle out of Miami. I know he's dealing with a back injury, and if the Cardinals take an offensive tackle, I know it's most likely going to be in a trade back. But with no trades, I have them going Francis Mauigoa, one of my favorite tackles in this class. I'm not super high on the early offensive line class in this year's draft, but Francis Mauigoa I really like as a prospect, and I like the idea of pairing Paris Johnson Jr. with Francis Mauigoa up for the Cardinals and their future quarterback, whether that's going to be Ty Simpson, whether that's going to be a guy in next year's class. Building the offensive line for your future young quarterback is never a bad idea. Then at pick 4, I have the Titans going with Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. I said this a few years ago when the Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson. Pairing a young quarterback up with a healthy running game to open up the passing game and to take all of the weight off of their shoulders, I think is a really good idea. Obviously, the Falcons did that with Desmond Ridder. That didn't really work out, but with the former number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward, giving him a weapon like Jeremiah Love out of the backfield who can be a receiver for him as well, but also open up the passing lanes with a healthy running attack. I love the fit of Jeremiah Love and the Tennessee Titans. At pick 5, I have the Giants going Sonny Styles, linebacker out of Ohio State, one of my favorite prospects in this draft, one of my first draft crushes for the Broncos, and then he quickly kept rising up the board, so it was unrealistic for the Broncos. But at pick 5, Sonny Styles, the former safety, is going to the Giants. A little bit risky taking a linebacker. I guess you could say the same thing with running back, because running back, linebacker, safety, tight end, they're typically not viewed as highly, so their position starts to fall. But if they're a really special prospect like the Jeremiah Loves, like the Sonny Styles, then you take them early and you don't worry about it. I think Sonny Styles is a fantastic player for the New York Giants here at pick 5. At pick 6, I have the Browns going Cornell Tate, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I believe they're still trying to see if Shadur is going to be their franchise guy or if they need to draft a guy next year. Getting a wide receiver 1, I believe, in Cornell Tate. And honestly, I know he wasn't the wide receiver 1 out of Ohio State, but Jeremiah Smith is just an unbelievable talent. Cornell Tate being your wide receiver 1, a great guy at tracking the ball down the field. Having a weapon like him for your franchise quarterback, whether that's Shadur, whether that's not, I don't think is a bad idea by any means. So Cornell Tate here is going to be my pick at 6 for the Cleveland Browns. At pick 7, I have the Commanders going with Ruben Bain Jr., edge rusher out of Miami. I know there's a lot of people concerned with his arm length, and if teams are concerned with that, they'll pass on him. But the teams that aren't concerned with it are going to draft him. And he was very productive and very effective coming off of the edge with the Miami Hurricanes. And then at pick 8, I have the Saints going with David Bailey out of Texas Tech, getting some more pass rush help for the Saints here at pick number 8. Again, I'm not super high on David Bailey like everyone else. I think 8's a fine spot, but number 2 overall, I think it's a little rich for my blood. So David Bailey right there, edge rusher out of Texas Tech going to the Saints. At number 9, I have the Chiefs going with Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU, after losing, obviously, Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson to the Rams. Trading away McDuffie, Jalen Watson signing in free agency. Chiefs need some cornerback help, so I have them grabbing the best one in Mansour Delane out of LSU. So you could argue Jamon McCoy, his 2024 film is fantastic. Obviously, there is the risk that he didn't play in 2025, so he's been out of football for a year. I think Mansour Delane is cornerback 1, but don't sleep on Jamon McCoy. I think he's going to be a fantastic talent as well. But with them losing 2 of their starting cornerbacks, I do think they need to address the position. So I'm going with Mansour Delane here at pick number 9. And then I have the Giants going with Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State. Caleb Downs is my top prospect in this draft. I think getting 2 Ohio State guys who arguably had the best defense in college football last season, adding them to your roster would be a fantastic move. I love Caleb Downs. I know safety typically isn't valued super high, but getting him here at pick 10, I think the Giants would hit a home run getting both Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs in this draft. Could arguably take Caleb Downs at pick 5. Would not bat an eye as he's my top prospect, but getting Styles and Caleb Downs would be fantastic value. Got to move pretty quickly here. At pick 11, I have the Dolphins selecting Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC. After Tyreek Hill's not going to return, and then you traded Jalen Waddle to my Broncos. You need to get Malik Willis or whoever your future franchise quarterback is going to be, if it's not him, a weapon. And Mekhi Lemon can be a wide receiver 1 out of USC. Got to address that position after losing your top 2 targets from last season. Then the Cowboys are taking Dylan Thieneman, safety out of Oregon. Yeah, the Cowboys, I do think, would like to trade up to get a different defensive prospect, or if it's Thieneman, I think they would like to trade down. But with no trades in this mock draft, I have them taking Thieneman here at pick number 12, who the consensus is a lot higher on Thieneman than I personally am, so that's why he is the 12th pick, but I do think he is worthy of going in the first round. Then we have at pick number 13, the Rams going, I wish my arrow key would stop double clicking, Monroe Freeling. I believe there's some contract situations coming up with the Rams on their offensive line, so they're grabbing my second best offensive tackle here in Monroe Freeling at pick number 13. At pick 14, I have the Ravens selecting Vega Ioane, guard out of Penn State. The Ravens need interior help with center and guard, so I'm giving them the best interior offensive lineman in this class in Vega Ioane. Then at pick 15, the Buccaneers are going with Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher out of Miami. I'm going to try and start speeding this up a little bit. We're already 8 minutes into this segment. Love Akeem Mesidor. I know he's on the older side for prospects, but I think he's a fantastic pass rusher in his own right. Maybe got a little bit overshadowed by Ruben Bain at Miami, but Akeem Mesidor is a fantastic, fantastic player. At pick 16, I have the Jets selecting Jordan Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. The main reason why Tyson is falling is because of his injury history. None of them are connected, but he has gotten injured over the past few seasons, so he is slipping down. And if it wasn't for the injuries, he could arguably be the first receiver off the board. I really like Carnell Tate, but you could make that argument that Jordan Tyson should be the top receiver off of the board. So he's the pick here at pick number 16 for the Jets. At 17, I have the Lions pairing up Penei Sewell, that's who their offensive tackle is, with Spencer Fanow, getting some more help on that offensive line. At pick 18, I have the Vikings selecting Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, safety out of Toledo. McNeil-Warren, Thieneman, and Caleb Downs, 3 safeties all in the first round, is kind of crazy for this era of football, but honestly, all 3 of them deserve it in their own right. They all should be first-round picks. Then you have Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon, to the Panthers. I know you have Jatavian Sanders, and I still like Jatavian Sanders, and maybe I'm higher on him than most people are, but getting an athletic freak in Kenyon Sadiq to add to that offense to help Bryce Young out, I love that idea. You have, obviously, the offensive rookie in the year in Tet McMillan. You're hoping Xavier Legette can progress and get better, right? He was a first-round pick for you, so you're hoping Xavier Legette can get better. But adding this athletic freak at tight end for the Panthers, I love that, giving Bryce Young some more help. I still am super high on Bryce Young. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. At least I want him to. And so getting him all the help possible in Kenyon Sadiq, I think this would be a great pick for the Panthers. At pick 20, I have the Cowboys getting more defensive help with Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. Again, like I said, he could arguably be the top cornerback in this draft. He just didn't play in 2025, so he's been out of football for a year. Would he have put up the same season had he played? There's all those questions, but Jermod McCoy is a fantastic talent out of the University of Tennessee, and the Cowboys defense does need some help, so they get some secondary help with Thieneman and Jermod McCoy here. At pick 21, you have Omar Cooper Jr. going to the Steelers. We say it every year, but could the Steelers be a destination for quarterback in the first round? This could easily be Ty Simpson, but we'll see. If Aaron Rodgers returns, you got Omar Cooper, you got DK Metcalf, and even if he doesn't, whoever your quarterback's going to be, whoever your quarterback of the future is going to be, is going to have some nice weapons with DK Metcalf, and Omar Cooper Jr. And then at pick 22, I have the Chargers going with Caden McDonald, defensive lineman out of Ohio State, one of the best run stoppers from the interior in the league. If you want to stop the run, Caden McDonald is your guy. One of my favorite players in the draft, so it pains me that the Chargers are getting him, but do think they need some defensive line help right there, so I'm giving the Chargers Caden McDonald. At 23, I have the Eagles selecting Blake Miller, offensive tackle out of Clemson, just preparing for life after Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson, really cool guy, one of my favorite offensive linemen in the league, but he is getting up there in age, so Blake Miller is the pick here for life after Lane Johnson. And then you have Max Ianacre, offensive tackle out of Arizona State, going to the Browns, protecting your quarterback and getting some offensive line for your quarterback of the future. Getting Ianacre and Carnell Tate, I'm liking those two first-round picks for the Cleveland Browns here. Then at 25, I have the Bears selecting Keldrick Falk, edge out of Auburn, and honestly, I'm kind of up and down on Keldrick Falk. Some days I like him, some days I'm like, so it's really based on how I feel about Keldrick Falk, but I have him here as the 25th overall pick to the Chicago Bears. Then at pick 26, we're getting one of my favorite players in the NFL draft, and that's Caleb Banks, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. There were some rumors a couple days ago, maybe a week ago, or I think it was a mock of the Broncos selecting Caleb Banks all the way down at pick 62, which I would love. I don't think he slips that far, but if it does happen, hey, I would not mind it at all, but I think he is a first-round talent, so I have Caleb Banks going here to the Bills at pick 26. At 27, I have Caleb Lomu going to the 49ers. I know Trent Williams just signed an extension, but he is getting up there in age, so I'm getting a guy in there for the 49ers to help prepare for the future. Then you got Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle, who might switch to a guard at the next level, but the Texans need offensive line help. So Caden Proctor, if he plays tackle for you, great. If he needs to kick inside to guard, great. Just a versatile offensive lineman for the Texans here at pick 28. At 29, I have the Chiefs selecting Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington. He's not going to be much of a separator, but he is going to be an X receiver who can go up and get those 50-50 jump balls. I'm a little bit higher on Denzel Boston than I think a lot of people are. Have him as, my 5th wide receiver. So he's behind Omar Cooper, but just ahead of Casey Concepcion. He is the pick here at pick 29 for the Chiefs. And then you have Avian Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, going to the Dolphins. I'm getting the Dolphins some secondary help with the brother of AJ Terrell and Avian Terrell here at pick number 30. And then at 31, I have the Patriots selecting T.J. Parker, elite last name, edge out of Clemson, to get them some more pass rush help, with the Seahawks selecting Cassius Howell, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. I'm not super high on Cassius Howell as or compared to other people, so I think 32, I'm fine with it. But again, I'm not super high on Cassius Howell like a lot of other people are. Now, some players who didn't make it into the first round who I think should be first-round picks: Jacob Rodriguez. Again, I'm a lot higher on him than I feel like a lot of the consensus are. C.J. Allen, the running back out of Georgia, I could see him being a first-round pick. Peter Woods, the defensive lineman out of Clemson, he could be a first-round pick. Who else is there? And Casey Concepcion. That's the obvious one who I do think is a first-round talent, but I have him as, my 6th receiver. I still think he's a first-round pick, but all the teams that I could see going receiver in the first round took a receiver. So couldn't find a spot to put him, but would not be shocked, and I think that Casey Concepcion could and should be a first-round pick in this draft. But yeah, those are all 3 of my mock drafts: my dream scenario, my realistic scenario, and my full first-round mock draft for the 2026 NFL Draft, kicking off tomorrow. If you do want to watch me go live, they should be scheduled on the channel very, very soon after this video. Definitely by Thursday morning, Thursday midday, they should be scheduled. I'll schedule all 3 days right there. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.